So here comes the more official part of our presentation. We're going to do some recording here of this. Welcome to the SOR for GPRA Facilitator Orientation. I'm here today with my colleagues, Nicole, who's going to co-present with me today, and with Logan, who's going to mind our chat box today. And we're with the OmniSOR evaluation team. We just want to thank you all for being here today, and we're pretty excited for this next round of the SOR grant. All right, so our agenda for today's meeting. So we want to note right off the top, this is not a full GPRA training. That's going to be scheduled on December 9th, and we're gonna send out more information about that soon. But this particular orientation provides an overview first of just a few grant-related topics, but it's going to primarily focus on some special GPRA requirements that are especially important to follow for this chunk of the new year, as they're coming directly from SAMHSA. So SOR 4 officially started on October 1st, and it runs for 3 years this time instead of 2. So a 3-year SOR 4 period. So we'll be kind of walking through some introductions. We'll talk about a little bit, real high level grant overview, the GPRA requirements for SOR 4. We'll give you a refresher on GPRA timelines, just to start planning that in your minds. We'll offer some of our TA communication methods and resources, and then we'll leave space for some key takeaways and additional time for questions. And first, just to let you get to know us and Omni in case you're not quite as familiar. So many of you may be, and this slide here tells you a little bit more about what Omni Institute is and our organization as a whole. The team that's gathered here today is the evaluation TA team for the SOR grant, and we support the SOR subgrantees, that's CSBs and agencies, with their required data collection, especially regarding SAMHSA's required tool, the GPRA, and then some other required quarterly surveys that you're doing. So we're going to focus on the topic of the GPRAs and give you some additional background on the grant in just a second. And to put a few names to faces, you can see our team here. A couple of our team members are actually in Virginia with the prevention folks doing a block grant summit. So today we have Logan, I'm here along with Nicole, and our oversight, Jenna. I think she's here with us today as well.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Jenna. Hey, Logan, are you there? Nicole?
Hi, everyone.
Yes, hi, folks. Welcome.
Thanks. Well, we also want to point out that we're joined by some members of the DBHDS team. I believe all these folks are here. Iva Brown, Angela Waite, Marie Bage, Bettina Coghill. And though the team is with us today, our focus is going to be on the GPRA and some basic grant requirements. And if you have other kinds of grant-related questions, you'll want to reach out to DBHDS after this training. Anyone from DBHDS just want to unmute and say howdy?
Hi, this is Iva. I just joined. Sorry, I was talking to Miss Candace.
Hello, Iva. Good to see you.
Representing
the team.
Awesome. See a few faces and names I recognize. Thank y'all for being here, and thanks Omni for always keeping us going the right way in our GPRAs.
The beloved tool. All right. Well, let's dig in a little bit. So before we get into all things GPRA, we're going to just go over a few very high-level tidbits about the SOR grant and some reminders of subgrantee responsibilities. So first of all, funds are awarded for opioid and stimulant use disorder treatment, and this includes services you provide and staff who are funded with the grant to provide treatment. DBHDS approves your plans and budget for the services that will be funded, of course. The GPRA data collection is required for individuals receiving services who consent, and incentives are allowed for particular GPRAs like follow-ups, as with prior grant periods. And Omni is continuing to support the evaluation of the SOR grant activities in collaboration with DBHDS. We've been working together since 2019. So this includes supporting you all with GPRA technical assistance and training throughout the year. We just wanted to point out kind of 3 high-level responsibilities or CSBs and agencies from our perspective by completing the GPRA. The required tool helps you connect your clients with key services. You're finding out more about your client stories so they can be connected to appropriate services. And it also helps, it's a requirement, so it helps to ensure continued grant funding for everybody. There is a quarterly survey that's also required of those who receive treatment and recovery funding. And we will be in touch in the future about what that looks like, but there'll be some questions that are the same each quarter and some that are unique to each survey, looking at how many people you are serving and what kind of services you are providing and things like that. And then once in a while, we send out other surveys or inquiries and things like that as topics of interest come up for DBHDS or Omni, including things like sharing success stories and the like. So just to high level describe the GPRA, this tool collects individual level information about clients who are receiving SOR services, and it's completed at 3 time points: intake, discharge, and 6 months after intake, which is what we call follow-up GPRA. And multiple staff at your agency may already be or can conduct GPRA interviews and enter them into an online system. But we support training all around this, and we're going to have a full GPRA training on December 9th. The data itself are provided back to your agency in an annual report, and you can also get GPRA data files upon request with all the data that get entered. And then you're also able to do GPRA's justice settings, and we have some additional guidance for that if you have questions about that. The quarterly surveys I mentioned are both for treatment and recovery funding recipients. And this gets at summary data for your agency on people receiving services. This happens 4 times a year. 1 point person at your agency should complete the survey. You could collaborate offline, but 1 person will need to enter all the data. And just, to let you know, this looks at how many individuals receive SOR funded services, kinds of services, number of peers providing services, if justice programs are involved, capacity effects of SOR funding on your agency, and also successes and challenges that you may be experiencing. So those kinds of questions will be coming to you quarterly. But let's move into the main topic for today. And this is GPRA in SOR 4. So high level, the SOR 4 GPRA intake 3-year goal is, if my math is correct, 5,400 or about 1,800 intake GPRAs per year across all the CSBs and agencies. The new GPRA intakes for this period will be from October 1st onward. So as you all are aware, we did have a data entry pause, but so this really will kind of start most officially tomorrow on the 15th. We'll be starting to enter those GPRA data in earnest. For those of you familiar, the survey questions themselves have not changed for SOR 4. So it's basically the same survey. The paper version's been updated and the online versions to say SOR 4 and things like that. So it'll look very familiar to you. We do have some new links to the online system, and that should be ready either, I think, by tomorrow as well. So you could get into the online system to enter things. But for today, we're going to focus a little bit on a special, what we're calling kind of a short-term process. And this has to do with SOR 3 clients who are continuing services into the SOR 4 time period. We'll explain a lot more as we go along in just a bit. We did want to note that there are new consent forms. You'll want to reconsent your clients for this new period. And the form itself, here's a little screenshot. It's been slightly updated. There's some new dates, grant information. And we've also adjusted it to have more accessible language for all reading levels and make it look a little less wordy than in previous years. There are standard consent forms and justice consent forms in both English and Spanish that are available. And the consent form itself reminds us that the evaluation is voluntary, what participation consists of, what the client should know. And then it's incumbent on you to get either verbal or written consent for new intakes because it's a new grant period. So we recommend that you maybe print out the new version that's available on our website and recycle any old blank copies from prior years because the language and the dates and the information have changed. Okay. So the 3-year SOR 4 grant period began October 1st, basically, and Omni received, as you've kind of heard through emails and through me talking today, some new guidance from SAMHSA. They provided instructions on how CSBs and agencies should transition active SOR clients into the SOR 4 time period. And if you've been around a long time, since 2019 when we started doing this evaluation, as we shifted from SOR 1 to 2 and SOR 2 to SOR 3, the processes those years were different. So that's why we're bringing you together to explain how this will be working. So don't rely on any of your memories for this. This is all new processes. You'll notice here that the 4th bullet relates to some GPRA closeout data entry that many, if not all of you, have been doing for the past week or so. I just wanted to just touch on that really quick. We set out guidance for that separately. SAMHSA informed us that they wanted to have all SOR 3 clients, whether or not they were continuing services into SOR 4, to have a special administrative discharge GPRA entered for them, dated September 29th, 2024. And this was their goal at getting sort of like I would say like a timestamp or a closeout in their data that they use for the grant period. So I just wanted to thank you all. I know people have been working really hard to get those entered into the system, and appreciate that extra work to do that on SAMHSA's behalf. So who does this current transition guidance that we're going to talk about apply to? So it applies to all of your clients who are going to continue to receive SOR funded services from SOR 3 into SOR 4. And we're going to walk through this today. I'm going to convey how this all works to you. So first, we're going to provide this guidance through this training that we're doing today, which is going to be recorded, and we'll make the slides available. We'll also have an email coming your way that's going to describe everything as I'm describing it today, but in more of a narrative form. We've also created what we're calling like a TA one sheet that'll have a graphic I'm going to show you in a little bit, and it's going to help with your understanding and just sort of graphically represent the steps that have to get taken. And then we're also creating what you'll hear me refer to a bunch, a one-time SOR 3 to 4 transition tracking sheet. And that tool is going to align with the steps you'll need to take as well for each client listed on the sheet that you get. That's going to end up in your drop boxes tomorrow. So you'll use these instructions and that tracking sheet to complete the steps we're going to go over today. So we know many people appreciate having multiple ways of understanding complex procedures and processes. So we wanted to be able to provide these multiple ways of conveying this information to you. So let's talk about that transition tracking sheet. So this is, it's not going to look exactly like this, but close. So here's what the special sheet's going to look like. It's all, you'll notice a bunch of colors. We're going to show you why that matters in a moment. But the sheet will show you client IDs that you may need to take through this GPRA transition process. And the columns label 3 key scenarios that you'll be directed to. Where you see yes will mean to follow the instruction for that column, and it follows along with our written instructions. And we're going to explain these scenarios now. Plus, again, we have this graphic we'll look at that'll condense this information into one location. And you can use any combination of these tools to help you get through these next couple months. So SAMHSA framed these as scenarios. And so that's how we're continuing the language that they suggested. So we're going to talk about 3 important scenarios. The first one is fairly simple. Transitioning clients who've completed a SOR 3 follow-up GPRA, and then they're continuing into SOR 4 services. So the process would be for you to check column A. I'll show you this in a second. With the GPRA ID for the relevant client IDs. You would migrate to the orange column B and look for a yes. And then keeping the same client ID, complete a SOR 4 intake GPRA for the client. So basically you would look for the orange column. If the client's continuing to receive services, that's what you would follow, that procedure. Scenario 2, this is our green scenario. This is the more complicated of the scenarios, so I'll just walk through it pretty thoroughly here. So this is for transitioning clients who have not completed their SOR 3 follow-up yet, and they're continuing SOR 4 services. And the other condition, their SOR 4 follow-up windows open in SOR 4, that are open during SOR 4, but not later than December 20th. So we'll kind of give you some more guidance on that, but it will describe here to check out column A for that GPRA ID, go to column C and look for a yes. And then you'll be looking at the opening and closing dates of the windows, the follow-up windows. And once the window is open, at that time, you'll be able to complete both the SOR 3 interview follow-up and the SOR 4 intake GPRA at the same time. So you will only need to conduct one interview at that time, but enter the responses in 2 different places, basically. So again, this is where you would look on the sheet that we're going to be sending, this green scenario 2. You would also be referencing the window opening and closing date, which will kind of like give you the dates that you will be able to conduct the intake and the SOR 3 follow-up within that time period. There's an example of the yes, and then when can I do this thing? And here it is. Okay. The blue scenario, scenario 3. So transitioning clients who have not completed a SOR 3 follow-up and whose follow-up window doesn't open even until after December 20th. So you'll be checking for column A with the GPRA IDs again. You're going to look at columns D and E, which is those window opening and closing dates. And you'll see the follow-up window opening and closing dates. You'll go to column F, which is in blue, which identifies which clients where the SOR follow-up window open date is after the 20th. And if that's true, all you're going to need to do is complete a SOR 4 intake GPRA with the same ID. And we had the SPARS data system, where all the SAMHSA data goes, where all this GPRA data goes, has limits as to how long it's going to be open to the SOR 3 data. And so there needs to be some time to make sure all that data is correct. So we have this December 20th date as the latest point to follow this sort of transition thing here. Again, this is what it would look like on your sheet. You'd look for the follow-up date. You could see here in the example is after the 20th of January. So it's telling you to only do a SOR 4 intake for that person.
After the
Right.
20th of December.
Right. Yes, thanks, Logan. So I'll run through this in a graphic scenario, and then we can have you ask some questions. Is there anything in the chat at this point that we need to address, Logan?
No, not right now.
Okay, thank you. All right. So here, I would like to say the cool graphic that we created for you. So we'll walk through the scenarios once again. This is another kind of like tool that you can use to follow. So scenario 1, this is telling you, check column A. It's telling you sort of like stepping it through in terms of, if this is the case, then do these things. The procedure will be the same, but it helps you kind of identify what's happening. So for this example, SOR 3 to 4 services, are they continuing? Yes. Okay, then what? SOR 3 follow-up completed? Yes, I already did that during SOR 3. SOR 3, will that window open before 12/21? Not applicable because you already did the SOR 3 follow-up. But continue to the right. Should I do a SOR 4 intake? Yes. When should I do that? Now. Or, around now. Do I need a SOR 3 follow-up? No, because I did one already. So that's not applicable either. So we've kind of played this out for each of these scenarios where you can follow along. If services are continuing, the green row, green column, color coding, all that's will kind of like walk you through the process. We did this for scenario 3 as well. Basically, the not applicable means it doesn't apply, so you don't have to do there is no when, for instance. And then we also have a couple other cases that we just wanted to include in this graphic, which if SOR 3 to 4 services are continuing and you say no, and did you do a SOR 3 follow-up? Yes or no? Doesn't matter. You're kind of done. You're done because your client is not continuing into SOR 4. And then if you have a new client who's just starting in SOR 4, so they're not a SOR 3 client, all you'll need to do then is a SOR 4 intake now, and then no SOR 3 follow-up will be needed. And they'll just get on their trajectory for SOR 4 follow-ups and all that.
All right, Cheryl, now we're getting some questions.
Yes, and we have space for that. Let's see what we can do.
Let's see, the first one, let me scroll up a little bit. For scenario 2, if the client's follow-up window closed already, for example, it closed in October, do we still do the SOR 3 follow-up?
Yes, after October 1st, yeah. Yes, and that's when you would do the SOR 3 follow-up. And if your client's continuing, you would also do the SOR 4 intake.
So for example, Cheryl, if their SOR 3 follow-up window closed in like October 15th, since that date has already passed,
oh, I see
would
what you're
not
saying.
need to do the SOR 3 follow-up, right? They would just do the SOR 4 intake if they're continuing services into SOR 4.
Yeah, because the window is going to be the window won't be open past the 15th. Is that sort of closed already?
That's
Yeah.
my understanding of Farron's question, but Farron, if you want to provide any other details.
I was just wondering about, I had some SOR 3 clients who their follow-ups weren't done and they closed during this data collection pause period. So I didn't know if I'm supposed to get those follow-ups done or not.
And you are still, if the window's open, you could still do them if you're
No, like their window closed like
their window
in
closed.
October.
Okay.
But I wasn't able to, because we haven't been collecting data all of October. So
no, you don't need to do that then.
Okay, so we'll just have some who just don't have. Okay, got it.
Right. Yeah, it's an imperfect, imprecise system, but through the administrative discharge processes that people are doing, at least SAMHSA's going to know that that client kind of like ended their SOR 3 thing. But is this person continuing in SOR 4? You can re-intake them
Yeah, I
from
believe.
scratch.
Yeah, I believe a couple of them are still receiving SOR services.
Mhm.
So I just do an intake and I don't have to worry about the follow-up then.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'm seeing a question from Preston about information on the administrative closeout period. We sent that to all the points of contact at each CSB or agency, probably a week and a half ago to 2 weeks ago. And maybe the information didn't ripple out. What agency are you with, Preston? Outside? Okay. You might want to check with sort of the main point of contact supervisor there to see that. I'm not sure if you're you probably aren't our main point of contact with Southside, I'm guessing. So what SAMHSA wanted was for all agencies and CSBs to do an administrative discharge if a discharge had never been done for that person during SOR 3. And it's a special kind of administrative discharge with a particular reason they wanted everybody to check off in the tool, and giving it a date of September 29th, which is officially the last day of the SOR 3 period. If you would like to reach out to us, you can share your email and chat, or I would say, are you going to, Dave wants to know, are we going to continue with those? Do your best to do that cleanup with the tracking sheet that we sent over the next day. And then I think we'll be moving on to the new grant year, and all this kind of transitional stuff would make the most sense at this point. Good question, Farron. I feel like, yeah. How
Sorry.
long do we have to do it? Yeah, we never did set a closeout date, like the last date to get this information in. I'm just going to say tomorrow, 11:15.
There's one other question that I don't want to get lost in the chat here. From Megan Ortiz, for scenario 2, we only have to do one GPRA that will count as both the SOR 4 intake and the SOR 3 follow-up.
Answer is kind of. So there are two distinct surveys, but there's a lot of information that's the same in both tools. So what we recommend is using the intake GPRA, collecting that information, and then using the information you collect on the intake to populate the corresponding questions in the SOR 3 follow-up, because they'll be pretty much the same. The intake GPRA has more questions about demographics and things like that. That's why we suggest using that as your interview format, and then you can use those answers to enter both the SOR 4 intake and the SOR 3 follow-up for that person. Does that make sense? Yeah, Farron. Yeah. How do I frame this? I think I might need to consult a little bit on the timeline for the deadline for completing the administrative discharges. I was hoping that we could wrap them up so that we could continue. I don't know if, to my knowledge, there's not going to be audits of what's open and what hasn't been entered. I know that SAMHSA wants this information so that they can have 3 time points registered for each client that's in their data system. So I'm going to just reel back on my deadline of tomorrow And I will consult with our team in DBHS just to see what makes sense so that we can bring this to a close and get rolling on all the needed GPRA that we need, you know, that things that you've been holding back or that you've been waiting to do for this new time period. So I appreciate your patience with that. And I should have anticipated that question. Kathy wants to know, they can receive the gift card, but there is no intake gift card. So that isn't allowed through the SOR funding, but they could receive their follow-up gift card that they've been promised from SOR 3 at that time. Dave wants to know if you could complete both. Sure. Well, this is where it might not work. No, it would work. Sorry, I'm reeling back. So Dave was wondering if you can complete the online survey at the same time using like a split screen with one on one side and one on the other. I don't see why you couldn't do that. Whatever kind of makes sense in terms of your workflow. I know some people collect data on paper first and then input it. Some people do it live right into the online system. I think you should give it a try, Dave. See how that goes. It will allow you to enter both of those IDs and it is separate surveys. So you should be able to do that.
There's another question above as well that says, it's about the Dropbox tracking sheet. Would you be able to go back to that slide, Cheryl, that has a screenshot of that?
Sure. Is this good? This one?
Yes. And just again, this sheet has not been shared with you all yet. It should be in your folders tomorrow, your individual Dropbox folders. But the question is, on the Dropbox, all the ones that have a no in the column will have an administrative discharge GPRA completed in the discharge column. And I think that this question is referring to the tracking sheets, like the final tracking sheets.
Oh.
Then for the consumers who are still in the program, will all need a new intake entered under SOR 4 GPRA. My guidance here would be for SOR 4 intakes that need to be completed, I would advise you to reference this tracking sheet that will be coming to your folders tomorrow instead of the SOR 3 final tracking sheet, because this will be way more clear in exactly what surveys you'll need to complete for which ID.
Clear as mud, right? So there's a lot of questions in the chat about the incentives. Now we do go into incentive in our full GPRA training, but SANSA's requirements are that you may provide a $30 gift card for a follow-up interview only. So that is the restrictions on how the funding can be, SOR funding can be used for that. And there's some rules about what kind of gift cards can be given and things. There is something called contingency management, which is a prevention process or procedure that your agency may or may not be allowed to use, which does allow additional incentivization up to, I think it's $75 per year in increments of, it's like, I don't have my notes at my fingertips here, but you would be able to offer additional incentives at intake, discharge, and follow-up as long as it met the criteria and your agency uses contingency management as part of the treatment regimen. Is that helpful? I know I see a couple people wondering about giving incentives at intake and 15 at, but no, there is not an intake. There is no allowable incentive at intake, only at follow-up with SOR funds. And at December 9th, we're going to get into that a little bit more.
And I just make sure I got that right. There are no intake incentive gift cards at all. Only the whole full $30 is for when we follow up with them. It's
Mhm.
only to be used then.
For an interview, yeah, not administrative, just usually administrative, you can't reach them anyway, but yeah, just for that interview follow.
Okay, has it always been like that?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, well, we didn't do it but we'll do it like that now. But the other question is that out of the funding, if we do offer clients contingency management, we have up to $75 per year per client to offer something that intake, discharge, and follow-up.
Yes, and I think there can be other components to contingency management. In addition to, can be in-kind types of things. And so we do have some guidance on our website about that, but we can definitely spell that out a little more clearly to folks. This is a perfect example of how we could use our news post system to clarify some guidance around incentives and contingency managements. And so our team can make a note to do that in the early parts of SOR 4 so everyone is on the same page. Yeah, I don't know. DBHDS would have to speak to, I'm going to say 99% certain that the gift card situation needs to only be at the follow-up interview point and not split up, between different time points of the GPRA.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Angela. Someone was curious if they could do an administrative intake. Well, there is no such thing as an administrative intake. They're all interviews. So you would need to have the client, schedule an interview with the client and do the intake interview with them and then use those answers to populate both the SOR 4 intake and the SOR 3 follow-up that you're doing. So you're kind of like killing two birds with one stone for a while until we pass that December 20th time point, and then we'll just be kind of like surfing along in SOR 4 like always. Great. Well, I see some really great questions. I really appreciate all of them. And we're gonna kind of continue to make sure. I'll just scoot along in my slides here. We also have a PDF we're going to be sharing tomorrow. We'll put it up on the website that kind of talks about all this stuff as well, as I mentioned. All right. So in talking about the GPRA, as long as we're here today, I wanted to hand it over to my colleague, Nicole, who's just going to remind us all about the GPRA time points.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. It's me, Nicole here. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm going to ask to shift your brain to thinking only about SOR 4. And this is just going to be a refresher of the timeline. Like Cheryl mentioned, we're going to have a more in-depth training December 9th, and that's going to be the full intake training. And we'll send out announcements through our channels of communication in the next couple of weeks. So let's get into the refresher about the 3 points. So you have the intake survey, and that happens very quickly once your client comes into treatment services. Then you have your follow-up. The follow-up window opens about 5 to 8 months after the intake GPRA, and you must complete a client discharge either before or after. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means as well in the next slides. And then you have the discharge, and this just simply means when your client leaves services. So here is that timeline that we're talking about. So you can see down below in the blue box, the intake is when your client first comes into treatment services. And then up top on the green box, it's that 3-month follow-up window. And then down in the yellow box, you can see how that discharge, the timeline varies. It just depends on when your client is discharged from SOR 4 grant services. And here is just a more specific example. So say you have a client that comes to an intake October 1st, their 3-month follow-up window is going to open March 1st to June 1st, and that's what that will look like. And then we'll see how it's important to remember that if the discharge happens before that 3-month follow-up window, you will still need to complete the follow-up. So we want to capture those 3 data collection points. And we also want to make sure that we're actively really making a concrete effort to reach out to clients to get that follow-up survey as well. And then this just shows that, again, that discharge varies on the timeline. If your client has already completed a follow-up GPRA, the discharge survey does still need to be completed as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to put the point on that with our catch-up closeout thing that we had to do this year. SAMHSA really wants to have all 3 of these time points recorded for each client during the grant period. So, so your tracking sheets that we'll talk about in a minute are going to help you keep track of all that.
Thanks, Cheryl. And now we'll talk a little bit more about how we communicate with you all, what are the resources we have available. So let's dive into it. We'll go ahead and talk about the website and the posting that we do. So this comes to you in 2 different ways. So first we have the SOR support email, and that comes through MailChimp. And then we also have on our SOR support websites, we have a news menu button that you can click on, and that will show you the post as well. And I'll show you what that looks like later. And then second, we have Dropbox. And each agency has their own Dropbox. If you need access to that, we're happy to help set you up. Just send us an email and we can give you some directions to that. And then third, we have the intake alerts and follow-up reminders as well. So every CSB gets monthly and bi-weekly reminders. The monthly reminders are to let your CSB know when you have not had any intakes in 30 days. And then the bi-weekly reminder is to let your agency know when those follow-up windows will be closing in the next 2 weeks. And you'll get this email. It's based off our contact list. So for any reason, if you feel like you haven't been receiving these or you need to be added to this list, again, reach out. We're happy to add you to that list as well. And then fourth, we have encrypted emails. It's our best practice that whenever you communicate with us, especially around client IDs or any PII, please send an encrypted email so that we can protect that information. And then we also just want to mention here that if you have any staff changes, folks leaving your agency or coming in, please update us as well so we can make sure they have all these communications set up for them. And then let's talk about Dropbox. So these are the things that you can find in your Dropbox. We have the tracking sheets. These are updated every Monday. And for SOR 4, we're going to start doing that November 25th. And then for the progress reports, we're going to start doing that monthly on January 2025, so in the new year. And again, if you need access to this, please send us an email and we can send you that invite and instructions on how to get set up as well. So here are the tracking sheets that for SOR 4 that Cheryl was mentioning. Nothing has changed from SOR 3. It looks pretty identical. We just want to give you a refresher. So some things to note, the GPRA ID number is also the client ID number. It is unique for each client and determined by your agency and can be recognized by you and your team as well. The tracking sheet, you can see in that blue little box with the arrow, that's the 6-month follow-up window and the closing dates as well. And then also in that orange box, you'll see your targets for your intakes and also where you are in that goal of your intakes as well. And then in the little green highlighted section, that's going to be your follow-up windows that are open. And then in the little red highlighted area, that's going to be how many follow-ups are closing within the next 2 weeks as well. So we highly recommend that you download this, you use it within your team. You can also make notes in this document. We have a little notes column at the end you can see on the screen where you can, just make sure that the transition, or not transition, excuse me, where you leave notes to each other on making the process very smooth for GPRA intakes and follow-ups. And again, this will be updated Monday, November 25th for SOR 4. And here we have an example of your progress report. Again, it's the same as last year as SOR 3. This is going to be populated in your Dropbox every month starting January 2025. There's some really great information, especially to give you that high level year overview. You can see in figure 1 how it shows in the little circles how many intakes you've done each month and your goals to that as well on the side. And then you also have your follow-up rates and your discharge rates, and that will help you make sure that you're aligning with that SAMHSA guidance of the 80% interview follow-up rate as well. And here's a vast list of all the great resources we have on our website. We have the survey links, the paper copies of the survey. We also have supporting documents for administration, such as like the consent form and things of that nature. We have all the training materials. We'll have the slides and the recordings as well. And then we also have some resources on how to engage your clients. And then if you haven't seen it already, this is our website. It's virginiasorsupport.org. Logan just popped in the link if you want to take a peek at that. And I want to draw your attention to the top right corner. We have that little orange circle with the arrow. That's a really easy, accessible way to get a hold of us. Just click on that and it will give you a form to fill out, and you can state your questions and we can help you in that way as well. And then this is a great resource for any folks who are new to the GPRA who need to find resources or reach out for help as well. Next, we're going to move into some takeaways. We just want to make sure we ground on what we learned here today, and we'll make space for questions at the end. So the first takeaway that we want to ground on is that everyone transitioning clients from SOR 3 into SOR 4 needs to follow the new SAMHSA guidance for GPRA completion. And then second, tracking sheets and progress reports will start fresh from scratch for SOR 4. And again, those tracking sheets for SOR 4, the fresh ones will come out November 25th.
There is in your Dropbox too. I just want to remind you that a final tracking sheet from SOR 3, which would have that more historic information on there as well. So that in tandem with for this process may be helpful. But the special sheet we provide is really going to be useful for this.
Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl. And just a few more slides. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So this is what's coming to you by end of day tomorrow. There's 4 things to look out for by end of day tomorrow. So one is an email that's going to have a link to the recording of the training and the slides. And then you're going to have the instructions as well from the different scenarios that Cheryl talked about today. And then you're going to get a really cool graphic TA sheet that's going to show and lay out the scenarios that Cheryl talked about. And then lastly, 4, in your Dropbox, by end of day tomorrow, you'll have that special SOR 3 to SOR 4 transition tracking sheet. That's going to be kind of your main thing that you're going to use to help transition your clients over as well. And now we'll have space for some additional questions. So if you want to pop them in the chat, or if you would like to come on mute, we'll go ahead and do that now. I see we have some in the chat. I think the first one is Alicia, if I'm saying that right. I wanted to ensure I understand we only need to complete GPRAs on clients who are specifically served by staff who are SOR funded. If they stay or not SOR funded employees, they don't need a GPRA. Cheryl, do you want to?
Yeah, it's partly correct. If they're receiving SOR funded services is the one criteria. Or I guess that would be like an or if they're receiving services from a staff person who is SOR funded, then they would do a GPRA.
All right, so I hope that answered your question, Alicia. You can give us a thumbs up or unmute yourself if you would like more of an explanation.
Got it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Zed Zed wanted to know when the SOR 4 Q by Q. So there's this very comprehensive question by question survey tool guide that SAMHSA puts out every year. And that's going to be available on our website tomorrow. That's like when you can really dig in and look at individual questions, like how to ask this particular question or why is this question being asked and things like that. It's especially helpful if you're unfamiliar or you want a kind of refresher about the tool itself. And so that will be updated tomorrow. And if you'd like to, yeah, Logan reiterated, update contacts, or if you want to reach out to us about questions about today or about just in general, keep in mind our main email is how you can reach all of us, which is sorsupport@omni.org.
I
Mara's
think we have
curious.
one more
Oh, yeah.
hand up, Cheryl.
I was
William,
gonna
do you want to unmute or did you want to type it in the chat?
Yeah, so could you I know we kind of run out of time, but I'm kind of confused. So in scenario 2, so if client hasn't done their follow-up before the specific date that you all stated, so we have to complete their 6 months follow-up for SOR 3 and also complete an intake for GPRA, the survey 4.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So it's two surveys, but hopefully the intake interview process will give you all the question answers, I should say, that you can use for both surveys because it'll be the same point in time. It just has to get entered into 2 different places.
Okay, thank you.
And how to do that best, I don't know what people are gonna, I don't know if anyone has advice, but you could print the paper surveys and record onto that and then enter it. I think Dave Cash was thinking he was gonna open a split screen and record directly into the online system. So one way might be better for one person and another for another person. So
So I think we're good on questions. And
I
that
have a
brings us to the end.
question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I have a question. When you're doing the follow-ups from SOR 3, right? Are we still using the same forms that we used to do SOR 3, or is there a new form that we will use to close out 3 for 4?
it will be the same SOR 3 follow-up that you've been using all along and
Okay.
a brand new link for SOR 4 intake.
Okay, thank you.
And the tools themselves, like the surveys, really haven't changed, but we've changed the titles on them and the cover and things like that. But basically you're right. You have it right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So
we are, I was going to say we are out of time. So thank you, everyone. And I'll pass it to Cheryl. Sorry, Cheryl.
No, it's okay. I was going to say, I know there were a couple outstanding questions, like when should I be done doing the closeout thing that we sent out a few weeks ago. So I promised to get an answer for you for that. And then the person who didn't receive that communication, check with maybe the main point of contact folks at Southside. I think it was Southside. I can't remember. Or email us at sorsupport@omni.org and we can send that original correspondence to you. Okay, anything from anyone from Omni, DBHDS? Have any closing thoughts now that your brains are packed full of juicy GPRA information? All right. All right, you'll be hearing from us quite a bit over the next few weeks as we send out alerts about this and news posts about that and emails and things like that. So we look forward to this tempo kind of like ramping down once we get into 2025. But for the next few weeks, it'll be a little bit more action oriented. So appreciate your attention to all the things that we're putting out there. And we're here for your questions when you have them. And if you need to have a phone call with us, let us know. We can talk through some things on Zoom or by phone as well. We're available. All right. With that, I will stop screen sharing and bid you all adieu.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Omni. That was great.
Thanks, Angela.